The Battleship Texas, the only surviving warship to serve the U.S. Navy in both World Wars, withstood the attack of enemy submarines, artillery, and suicide planes. Yet the greatest threat to her survival proved to be time, the elements, and neglect. Witness the effort to restore this National Historic Landmark and the return of the Battleship Texas.
There will not be another. She is the last of her kind. She was at one time the most powerful, the most dangerous warship afloat. And she's the Texas.
The Battleship Texas was built in the era of big ships and big guns. Her 10 14-inch guns made her at one time the most powerful warship in the world. In World War I, she sailed with the British Grand Fleet. The Texas became the Navy's first aircraft carrier when an airplane was successfully launched off Turret 2. In 1925, the Texas went to dry dock for modernizations. She emerged as flagship of the Atlantic Fleet. December 7, 1941. Japanese planes attacked Pearl Harbor, sinking or disabling 19 ships, including 5 battleships. The old Battleship Texas, half a world away, became one of the few remaining battleships left in the Navy as America entered World War II. She was there for the first major U.S. engagement of Nazi forces at the invasion of North Africa. She was there on D-Day, the Normandy invasion, providing bombardment at Omaha Beach. With victory imminent in Europe, the Texas was ordered to the Pacific to face the Japanese. At Iwo Jima, she spent 2 weeks at general quarters, firing over 900 rounds from her 14-inch guns. At Okinawa, she spent over 50 consecutive days at general quarters, and her big guns fired over 2,000 rounds. After the war, the aging battleship was given to the state of Texas as a memorial in 1948. Berthed at San Jacinto Battleground State Park near Houston, the Battleship Texas became the responsibility of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department in 1983. Before any repair work commenced, extensive research on the history and the condition of the ship was initiated to guide the restoration.
As well as the pantry.
First coming aboard, the vessel was in seriously deteriorated condition. There was numerous holes in the ship, both in lower hull and upper hull, which permitted ingress of seawater and weather. Primary job and a constant battle was simply to keep water from coming into the vessel. It was almost a weekly exercise to stop a leak in the ship, keep her from filling. Over 20% of the double bottom was in free communication to the sea. The ship was effectively sunk.
The scope of the damage was so extensive that the only recourse was to move the ship to dry dock for repairs. For over 40 years, the 34,000-ton battleship sat in the mud of the Houston Ship Channel. Moving her would not be easy. After 7 hours of pulling, it seemed the ship would never budge.
The ship found an obstacle in the water of unknown exact nature.
Is there a possibility that she is stuck in her own impression in the mud since the ship is wider at the middle?
I would approximate this to, say, a declivity in the bottom, rooted out by the ship. And it was necessary to pull the ship out of this hole and over residual debris after the vessel.
Now all the 78-year-old battleship had to do is stay afloat for the long trip along the ship channel and down Galveston Bay to the Todd Shipyard dry docks on Galveston Island. Keeping a ship in dry dock is expensive, so the first priority was to plug all the leaks in the hull.
The work in Todd consisted and was limited rather severely to work that we simply could not perform in the slip here. Specifically, such items as replacement of exterior hull plate, which obviously can only be done on the dry dock. Another of the problems which we simply could not have handled ourselves was the removal of the concrete overlayment from the main deck. That's concrete, rather than coming out in 6x6 slabs, came out in 9x9-inch chunks and was immensely labor intensive.
335,000 pounds of metal was replaced to regain the watertight integrity of the hull. She was then primed and painted the color of her last active duty, the dark blue camouflage of the Pacific Fleet. Before the Battleship Texas was modernized, she featured 2 cage masts. These were replaced in 1925 with 2 tripod masts, which housed the battery control rooms.
Tower on the main mast was a very substantial piece of work. This structure initially was extremely light, and due to difficulty of access was rather poorly maintained. The shipyard undertook to actually decapitate the ship. This the tripod was cut through right round and together with the paired wing wall frames on the dry dock. This house was picked, moved forward of the ship, and set down on the pontoon top. The yard's naval architect almost had a stroke. It's the first time that anything had ever been welded to that pontoon top. He was very jealous of the dry dock. But for the Texas, they did it.
At the dry dock, splinter screens and gun emplacements were refitted on the decks. After 14 months at dry dock, the battleship was moved back up the ship channel. During the tow, crews checked the bottom every hour for leaks. This time, the holds were relatively dry.
It's dry. Very good.
And the Texas passed her home berth at San Jacinto as a proud and dignified ship again. The Texas then docked at Greens Bayou for pierside repairs.
Greens Bayou was used primarily for 2 jobs. The installation of the wood deck on the vessel, which continued and continued. The other was the installation of the monopile attachments, which was essentially light work and could be handled pierside. At the same time, of course, ship's crew and the ship's forts turned to begin renovation of the hull. So while other folks were working on the outside, Texas folks were working on the inside.
As I pondered my remarks today, I recalled a story about 2 years ago. A young man that had to be somewhere around 8 to 10 years old stopped him and he said, "Mister, does this place belong to you?" And I was particularly interested in the senator's comments as he tried to struggle for some words, and he said, "Yes, sir, it does. And it belongs to you, and it belongs to everybody else out in this audience." So I hope when we're able to open the ship here at 1 o'clock, as you walk on board, you'll think about that.
I often get shot down for equilibrating the ownership of this fine old vessel to the owning of a vintage Bentley. You can't understand it till you own one. Yes, it is a luxury. This is a classic. This is the last dreadnought. All the rest have been turned into tin cans and razor blades. This is the last of them, babe. There won't be any more.